going beneath. The team on the WB-57 doing
EDL milestone, we have touchdown. I repeat, EDL, SRC has touchdown.
And touchdown of the OSIRIS-REx sample return capsule. A journey of 1 billion miles to Asteroid Bennu and back has come to an end, marking America's first sample return mission of its kind and opening a time capsule to our ancient solar system. Unofficial touchdown time, 8:52 a.m. Mountain. And the team can now breathe an immense sigh of relief. We now have the sample return capsule, the SRC, containing pieces of the asteroid Bennu. You see the reaction there just moments ago as they got that sample back on the ground. This is the team at Lockheed celebrating that momentous achievement of getting that sample from the other side of the solar system at Asteroid Bennu. When we took that sample, we were over 200 million miles away from us here on Earth. The long journey back, 1.2 billion miles from Asteroid Bennu, back to here with that sample, has just come to a dramatic close. And a little bit ahead of schedule, too. The SRC landing about 3 minutes ahead of when we had originally predicted. It was in a rush to get back here, carrying amazing amount of scientific information within. The team is eager to crack that SRC open, get the sample canister within, and begin the process of understanding the origins of our solar system and potentially the origins of life. We're not in the clear just yet. A key piece of the mission is about to get underway. This is the recovery operation phase. Once the team has officially confirmed the exact touchdown location, they'll be flying out on 4 separate helicopters and will operate much like a Formula One pit crew, if you will, to recover the SRC, take environmental samples at the landing zone, the LZ. Everyone has a role to play. It's going to be simultaneous action as they get that SRC recovered and begin to do an environmental safety sweep, collecting samples along the way. You see our mission ops team just next door. I once again remind you that the sample canister itself is not actually going to be opened here at Dugway. The next phase of the operation is simply to get that SRC into the portable clean room that has been specifically set up for this recovery operation. The team will then remove the heat shield protecting the SRC and its precious cargo within the entire descent through the entry, descent, and landing, remove the back shell, and then extract the sample canister within the tag SIM that just a few years ago collected pieces from the asteroid Bennu. Today, the goal is to get the sample canister.
Recovery operations, helicopters 3 and 4 are leaving rig for the landing ellipse.
You see some big smiles from the team there. They are getting those helicopters out to the landing ellipse now to begin those recovery operations. The first person to approach the SRC is Stu Wiley, our on-scene commander. You see the helicopter, the last of them, taking off from the Wig Mountain just at the edge of that landing ellipse. These helicopters will have a trip out to find that exact touchdown location of the SRC and begin those recovery operations. Stu Wiley, our on-scene commander, will be the first person to approach that SRC. He'll do an environmental safety sweep, checking for unexploded ordnances. As he mentioned in his interview earlier with Sophia, he understands this range. He's worked here for a number of years. He will brief the team on any possible dangers that would be presented to them as they begin those recovery operations. And then a team member from Lockheed Martin will begin to take gas and thermal readings once the area is safe of that SRC to determine whether or not it is at safe operational levels for the rest of the team to begin the recovery operations. As I mentioned, this is going to be simultaneous action. The team has prepared. They're all going to be wearing these bright white UV shirts, sample recovery shirts, and you'll see them walking out to that sample in just a few moments here once those helicopters land. A great view once again from our high altitude plane. You can see the parachute there next to our SRC. There is a possibility that there could be unexploded ordnances from that parachute. There is a mortar inside that is to fire to disconnect the parachute from the main SRC to help it come to a final rest. It's a bit challenging to see from this perspective, but there could be some potential roll marks or skid marks as that SRC came to a rest on the rugged desert surface below. As I mentioned, we did have a bit of precipitation here the other day, so that should make for a nice soft surface for that SRC, so it probably had a nice clean landing there. The team will assess as they get out there and check exactly how our conditions are for the SRC and the surrounding area. You heard Stu mentioning the team might need to wear some boots. The operations could get a little bit slippery as they begin to recover that sample. And this is a pristine sample from the ancient solar system and could hold the clues to how everything around us came to be, from the formation of the planets to the origins of life here on Earth. Needless to say, this is precious cargo, and the recovery team is fully aware of the gravity of the situation and the importance of what they're about to do today with these recovery operations. You can see it looks like our parachute has come to a stable rest. The winds were pretty low today, so it looks like it is not billowing at all. It is almost perfectly flat, at least from this perspective, on that desert terrain. And throughout all these operations, the crew member's safety is paramount. So you'll see the team probably huddle up a couple times as they begin these recovery operations to make sure that everything is safe and continues to be nominal as they make their initial safety sweep. All of this recovery should be a very quick process, usually. They've rehearsed for this again for months. They've been out here all summer really rehearsing for this moment. They did a drop test last month. They've also had numerous rehearsals actually practicing containing that SRC, getting it on a sample carrying fixture.
Recovery operations, WV has located the parachute on the ground.
You just heard that confirmation from that high altitude plane locating that parachute on the ground. This location info will be relayed to our team members aboard those helicopters as they begin their approach out to the landing zone. We do have that confirmation from the high altitude plane, as you just heard. We're still working to get confirmation from our NASA helicopter. It is on its way out to that landing zone as we speak, so we should hopefully have that view up in just a few moments. You continue to see our team just next door, the mission operations team, all looking at that high altitude view. Right in the middle there, just pointing around with the UV white shirt, is Rich Witherspoon from Lockheed Martin. He has been leading a lot of these operations for the past couple months. He's been preparing the team for this exact moment and really has been a great leader helping us get ready for these recovery operations. Yeah, so this ellipse here, this landing zone, is a quite large setup here, and this was chosen intentionally for this mission. It's about 37 miles by 9 miles total, this landing ellipse, out in the Utah Test and Training Range here in Dugway, Utah. This is an enormous facility. As you heard earlier, it's about the size of Rhode Island, all in all, this whole facility. It's relatively flat, very smooth terrain, this desert surface. So it's perfect for bringing something back and having that nice, safe landing on the desert surface. Just a few years ago, the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft back in 2020 made its tag attempt, the touch-and-go attempt to actually collect the sample that has now landed in this desert. When it did that, it was only at the surface for just a couple seconds, descending at a speed about 11 centimeters per second, just a little bit faster than a baby that is crawling. It's a very slow pace, but they were able to successfully get that sample and bring it from the edge of our solar system back to us here at that Utah Test and Training Range. You can see our full screen view here of that high altitude view, looking at the parachute at rest on the surface of the desert. This is at the Utah Test and Training Range. It's a wide open expanse here, and the team has this positional info, and they'll be relaying that to our helicopter teams to begin those recovery operations. And what you'll see in a couple seconds here, the recovery team, the recovery crews are responsible for securing the sample return capsule, the landing site around it, and helicoptering the SRC to a portable clean room that's located just next door here on the range. And just a little bit later on, it's going to be attached to a 100-foot long line beneath one of the helicopters, and then will actually be flown to the clean room. This was determined to be the best possible way to transport that SRC safely and efficiently, to get it on a nitrogen purge and maintain that pristine nature of the sample within. As I mentioned, this is an enormous ellipse, 37 by 9 miles. It's a large expanse to cover by car. It's a very bumpy ride out there as you kind of start to make your approach across this rugged terrain. With the helicopters, it will be approximately a 20-minute flight back with that SRC. They take it at a nice slow pace, effectively parading the SRC around, just giving it its last big moment as it is served its purpose officially at this point of getting that sample canister safely here to Earth. Once we actually land and begin those recovery operations, you'll see a lot of team members out beginning to take samples, both air and also soil samples from around the area. These are places of interest for the sample curation team that will actually open up the sample canister in the coming days down at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. They have a phenomenal sample curation facility there, and these samples from Asteroid Bennu will join a historic collection of other asteroid materials, including samples from the Apollo mission, samples from both the Stardust and Genesis missions, as well as Antarctic meteorites that were collected by our scientists. In the coming days, we'll actually know exactly how much sample we got back from Bennu. The original mission requirement was 60 grams of pristine sample from the asteroid surface. Based on some very clever engineering, the team believes that they have potentially 250 grams, or 6 times that mission requirement, inside. And so we just heard that unofficial touchdown time was at 8:52 a.m. Mountain Time here at the Utah Test and Training Range in Dugway, Utah. If you're just joining us, you see that view right now from one of our high-altitude planes observing our touchdown location. On your screen just above that crosshair is the orange creamsicle-colored parachute that brought us the last part of our journey down to the surface of the Earth. You heard from Jim earlier that main parachute is about 24 feet across. Fairly large parachute that helped us decelerate on our last leg of the journey. And so we just heard a confirmation actually that the main parachute deployed much higher than was originally anticipated. It was originally supposed to deploy at about 5,000 feet elevation, but it actually deployed at around 20,000 feet, so much higher up. So that would explain our kind of earlier touchdown time than expected here. Still has touchdown on the Utah Test and Training Range. Team members continue to fly out to this location aboard helicopters. As I mentioned, there are 4 recovery helicopters in total. The mission operations team is continuing to monitor the situation. They're the ones who are relaying us that info about that high parachute deployment, that 20,000 foot parachute deployment. They're going to be assessing the situation from their end here, relaying any possible info over to our recovery teams as they begin to make their trip out to our SRC. One of the first goals once the team gets out there is to safe and stow the parachute. Begin to mark places of interest, as I mentioned, for that curation team to begin sampling. This is all a very well-coordinated machine, very well-oiled machine that operates in tandem. They've rehearsed extensively for this moment. So we just heard from the team in that mission operations room that they have visual of the parachute, that orange parachute that you saw on your screen moments ago. But we do not yet have visual confirmation of the SRC itself. The team is continuing to survey the region, looking for that sample return capsule.